I shot the sheriff. Bob Marley here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Juan?
Well, the American Civil Liberties Union and the National Lawyers Guild are calling on the U.S. government to appoint an independent prosecutor to investigate the military and CIA's use of torture. The calls were made yesterday on the International Day in support of victims of torture. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, a House subcommittee heard the testimony of Vice President Dick Cheney's Chief of Staff, David Addington, and former Justice Department Attorney John Yoo. Addington and Yoo are said to have been instrumental in developing the administration's torture policy. Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida questioned David Addington about his role at Guantanamo.
A JAG attorney in Guantanamo, Diane Beaver, is quoted in a Vanity Fair article as saying that the message from you and the other visitors was, do whatever needed to be done. And just weeks after that visit, interrogators at Guantanamo Bay began developing a far harsher interrogation program than they had ever used before. Did you visit Guantanamo Bay in September of 2002, as has been reported?
I don't remember the exact date, but I went there a number of times.
Well, do you recall going to Guantanamo Bay around that time?
I really don't remember the dates, ma'am, but I remember going in the
How many times have you did you go to Guantanamo Bay during that period?
During that, well, I'm not sure what period you're describing. I'd say I've probably been to Guantanamo, I guess, maybe 5 times. First time would have been years ago, which isn't relevant to this, when I worked at the Department of Defense. And then I've probably been, I would guess, 3 or 4.
On one of those trips, did you meet with JAG attorneys?
I didn't recall it. I remember when Ms. Beaver, Colonel Beaver, who was referenced, I think, in Mr. Sand's Vanity Fair article. I did not remember meeting her there. The only time I remember meeting her is over at the Office of General Counsel of the Department of Defense many years later.
What generally prompted your trips to Guantanamo Bay when you made them?
Invited by the Department of Defense to go and accepted. I thought it would be good to go and see what they were doing to implement the decisions made in January and February at the White House to have detainees held there by the Department of Defense.
Did you have any discussions on those trips about interrogation methods?
I don't know about methods. I would say we probably did, only in this sense. I can remember, and I'm not sure it's this particular trip, but at least on some of the trips, and it may have
on any of the trips.
Yes, that they would show us an interrogation room with no one in it, so you could see what the room looked like. And then separately look through, and I assume, and I don't know, that the person being interrogated and the interrogator couldn't see us. In other words, like a one-way mirror kind of setup where you could see into that. So having done that, I'm sure they must have discussed...
on any of the trips, did you discuss interrogation methods that were directly referenced in the memo that we've been discussing here at this hearing?
I'm not actually sure I remember this memo having methods discussed in it, frankly.
Did you discuss specific types of interrogation methods that interrogators should use while at Guantanamo Bay on the detainees?
I don't recall doing that, no.
That means you didn't, or you don't recall doing it?
It means I don't recall doing it, as I said.
Well, it's hard to fathom that you would not have a recollection on specific conversations about types of interrogation methods as opposed to just generally talking about interrogation.
Is there a question pending, ma'am?
The question is, I don't believe that you don't recall whether you discussed specific interrogation methods. So I'll ask you again. Did you discuss specific interrogation methods on any of your trips to Guantanamo Bay with people who would be administering the interrogation?
And as I said to you, I don't recall. Let me be clear to you that there are 2 different things that may be helpful to you in asking your questions. The Department of Defense interrogation.
I really don't need assistance in asking my questions.
Well, the CIA program, and you'll find when you question me, the participation with respect to the CIA program is more extensive than the DOD program. And I wouldn't find it so unusual that I don't recall the particular details.
Except that interrogation, there is an accusation that interrogation methods went far beyond and up to and past torture following your visits to Guantanamo Bay. So I'm trying to get a sense of whether you actually went there, encouraged those specific interrogation methods, and whether they crossed the line.
Yes,
so
and I did not.
I'm pretty clear on why I'm asking you the questions and which one I'm asking you.
Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida questioning Vice President Cheney's Chief of Staff, David Addington, during a hearing of the House Judiciary Committee's Subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties. This is House Judiciary Committee Chair John Conyers questioning former Justice Department Attorney John Yoo.
During a public debate It was reported you were asked if the president could order that a suspect's child be tortured in gruesome fashion, and you responded that, I think it depends on why the president thinks he needs to do that. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe it's accurate because it took what I said out of context.
I see.
The quote stopped right before I continued to explain a number of things, which I appreciate the opportunity to do.
But so far what I read was accurate, but there was more.
It was like it stops like mid-sentence. So I didn't get to finish. I mean, I finished the sentence during the debate, but I didn't get a chance to.
Thank you. Is there anything, Professor Yoo, that the president could not order to be done to a suspect if he believed it necessary for national defense?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think that goes back to the quote you just read, because...
No, I'm just asking you the question. Maybe it does or doesn't, but what do you think?
I think it's the same question that I was asked.
Well, what's the answer?
First, can I make clear, I'm not talking about...
And you don't have to make anything clear. Just answer the question, counsel.
I just want to make sure I'm not saying anything.
You don't have to worry about not saying. Just answer the question.
Okay. My thinking right now.
Yes, right now.
Okay, my thinking right now.
This moment.
Yes. This moment, Mr. Chairman, is that, first, the question you're posing.
What is the answer?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to make you up.
I get it. Okay.
Let me answer I will answer the question.
No, you're wasting my time. Look, counsel, we've all practiced law. Hold it. Could the president order a suspect buried alive?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that I have ever...
I'm asking you that.
Given the advice that the president could bury somebody alive.
I didn't ask you if you ever gave him advice. I asked you, do you think the president could order a suspect buried alive?
Mr. Chairman, my view right now is that I don't think a president would, no American president would ever have to order that or feel it necessary to order that.
Near the end of Thursday's hearing, Congressman William Delahunt of Massachusetts questioned John Yoo on whether the CIA's use of waterboarding violated the Convention Against Torture, which the U.S. ratified in 1994.
There would appear to be a question, then, as to whether the use of, on those three occasions that have been acknowledged by the CIA and reported in the media, as to the technique that was used, as to whether it was a violation, a per se violation of the Convention Against Torture or not. Would you agree with me, Professor Yoo?
Your question is, you're saying there's an open question whether waterboarding in the way used by the CIA violated the Convention Against Torture.
That's what I'm saying. It's an open question.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just want to make sure.
Sure.
I think one of the problems is that the Convention Against Torture is interpreted different ways by different countries. And so if your question is, does waterboarding, is the way it's been described by the director of the CIA, Mr. Hayden, violates the treaty, it may violate the treaty as understood by some countries.
Right. Can I understand?
Our understanding of the treaty is defined by the criminal statute and the Torture Victims Protection.
Right. Without objection, Mr. White has one additional minute, which he has yielded to Mr. Delahunt.
I would pose this. The techniques, whatever was utilized on those occasions, and I think we can agree it's an open question, if they were used on American military personnel, it would still be an open question as to whether they violated the Convention Against Torture then.
I assume you're still asking me.
I'm asking you, Professor.
Yeah, Mr. Delahunt, my understanding of the testimony that the head of OLC gave before the committee was that
it was his view that if we were using it as part of the training on our own servicemen and officials who might be captured, that I thought it was his view in his testimony that that would not be a violation of the statute. But
So if it was used by an enemy because we considered that it did not constitute torture, then the enemy that utilized that on American military personnel would not be in violation of the Convention Against Torture. Is that a fair statement?
Time of the gentleman has expired. The witness will answer this question. Please.
Sir, I don't remember whether Mr. Bradbury went that far and reached that conclusion. That could be an implication of what his statement was, but I don't...
Excuse me, the question was of you, not of Mr. Bradbury.
I know, sir, but I wanted to make sure that I'm not